Hey guys, welcome back to another econ lesson. I thank you guys for taking care of the chapter 14. I know learning about taxes isn't the most exciting thing, and asking you just to do it through the PowerPoint slide was probably a little bit possibly obnoxious. I know some of you guys said that you prefer the videos. I just figured that being able to go through that at your leisure it was a little bit easier than trying to listen to me going through what would probably have been like a 45-minute video trying to explain all of that. So I figured I'd save you guys a little bit. But I hope everybody's well. This is going to be nice, short, clear, and concise. We're going to be talking about two different economic principles, supply side economics, demand side economics. We're going to get a little political with this and also do some connections to modern day events. All right, so here we go. So when we think of economics, you really want to think of like it's a divide, it's a party, it's which group do I associate which theory do I think is going to work the best? And two dominant theories that we've seen throughout the 20th century, now into the 21st century, is this debate between supply side economics and demand side economics. This debate is so polarizing that it's actually morphed into absorbing into the political parties. And as you guys can see on the slide, when we talk about supply side economics, we're talking about a very conservative, very Republican based economic approach. The theory of less government involvement. We want to decrease taxes. We want to have a free market. We want to have as little government regulation as possible. Whereas when we look at the demand side economics, we're looking at a lot of government involvement. We're looking at increasing taxes. We're looking at job creation through the government, and that very much is a democratic platform. The idea that the government needs to be present in the economic cycle, really to make sure that they're taking care of the people and creating jobs through government involvement, government funding. So when you think of supply side economics, you don't really hear of it as being supply side economics. Most people are going to refer back to the notion of trickle down economics. And as you guys can see in the political cartoon, it talks about the idea that if you cut taxes on the wealthy, then it's going to lead to job creation. This notion most of us would recognize as being Reaganomics or trickle down economics. I'm sure you guys remember talking about that with Mr. Murray's or Mrs. Ernst from last year. It's the belief that when you cut taxes on the wealthy, they're going to have a larger surplus of available income that, in theory, they're going to reinvest back into the market. So that's the whole notion that these companies, these billionaires, these CEOs, CFOs, whomever it may be, they're not just going to put their money into a savings account and let it just sit there. The belief of supply side economics is that they're going to take that money and they're going to put it back into the circular model. They're going to put it back into the circular flow. And by having more money in the circular flow, like we've talked about all year, that's going to lead to more job creation. That's going to lead to a greater surplus of goods. And having more and more money flowing in the economy is a really good thing. Now, opponents to supply side economics, they're going to look and say there's no guarantee that the rich or the wealthy are going to reinvest their money. And they're right. There is no law, there is no federal mandate that can dictate what people decide to do with their money. Even if someone decides to say they want to buy a new car, what happens if they buy a foreign car? So all of a sudden now, this hope of reinvestment is really decided upon the individual or the company itself. They may be getting tax breaks, which that happens with trickle down or supply side economics, but perhaps if they now have this available income, what's to prevent them from setting up a business in Mexico or setting up a business in the Philippines, because that's going to increase their bottom line. So that's where a lot of the opponents of trickle down economics, they're really kind of cautious to say, does it really work? Because there's no way that we can guarantee reinvestment of that money back into the market. The other issue that people have with it as well is when you start to do tax cuts, that takes away available money from the government, and perhaps some of those entitlement programs or social welfare programs that the United States may be needing to create and needing to fund, they don't have the availability of the money because of the supply side economics piece of tax cutting. So guys, just to summarize real quick with demand side economics, often referred to as Keynesian economics, What we're looking at is really just the role of the government getting involved, and the government, as it says, pump priming. I think of that as just pumping money into the economy because something happened. Whether it's the stock market crash of 29 or whether it's the COVID pandemic of 2020, it's the idea of the government needing to get involved to help the economy either stay afloat or to get the economy pumping again by taking tax dollars from the United States government and putting it back into the hands of whether it's individual Americans or giving tax breaks to big corporations or giving money to companies to stay afloat. That's something that needed to happen and does happen with this notion of demand side economics. And just with any political cartoon, obviously it's propaganda and obviously there's bias behind this. So you can see that the demand side obviously is going to view what it's doing as being right, that all the good things that it's going to do and that it's going to create. And there's a lot of economists that believe it. And that's kind of really where you get into this modern day of where do you politically identify, because both political parties have really taken a side, whether they're going to go with this Reaganomic trickle down effect or whether it's going to go with this FDR pump priming, government involvement. And obviously you guys can see from the other side of that cartoon that it's very biased towards showcasing how ineffective supply side economics is. But many economists will come back and say that the policies of supply side economics in the 1980s is what led to a booming American economy in the 1990s, and that supply side economics just takes time to really take a foothold or to really have an effect, which that's right. I mean, when you talk about reinvestment, it's not that you can just snap your fingers, reinvest, and be booming right away. But in demand side economics, the government can snap its fingers, and within a month, every American citizen has $1,200 sitting in their bank account, and small businesses and corporations have access to hundreds of billions of dollars to be able to try to save themselves. So, in closing, guys, it's really just kind of identifying which stance you believe, economically speaking, which one that you kind of associate, and of course, then you're going to identify a little bit of your political identification behind it as well. All right, guys, so that wraps up supply side economics versus demand side economics. You're going to have an RAO that's going to be due at the end of the week talking about this content. Besides that, stay healthy, stay well, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.